So in today's chat, I really want to talk about strengths in the way that you figure out what yours are and then how to communicate them to others for lots of various reasons. So I'm a big fan of Clifton Strengthfinders, if you're not familiar. I think if you go to strengthfinders.com or you just search Clifton, and also be in the notes or the description below. I'm a big fan of this assessment versus like 16 personalities or Myers-Briggs or any of the other ones, mostly because I feel like the Clifton Strengthfinders was as close to accurate and easy for me to apply in my work life, much more so than Myers-Briggs or whatever the things are. And the reason I say that, and like I'll get into my specific one so that you can really understand what I mean by that, but I think the premise of Clifton Strengthfinders is that there's like 34 strengths that then they kind of stack rank for you. And it's not about focusing on what are deemed weaknesses, it's more about like being able to identify your top 5 strengths and then leaning into those, because the premise is that if you lean into your natural strengths, 1, you'll be happier because there's something that you're naturally good at, and then 2, you'll be more successful in however you apply those things. And that's not to mean that like these are the only things that you're good at or that you can't evolve over time. I've taken 2 strength finders, one when I was a new manager, and then most recently in December 2020, and then 2 of my top 5 changed. So, and it really, to me, my explanation is like why 2 things fell out and 2 other things kind of rose to the top is because between the first and the second test, I became a business owner. I had, developed more leadership skills, and there's certain things that I learned to lean on more in order to like make good leadership decisions, quite frankly. But the like agenda of why I want to talk about this, like I kind of mentioned, was because 1, when you internally know what your strengths are, you can then use that as a method of discernment to kind of figure out, is this position, is this job, is this company allow me to like really express the things that naturally come good to me? How can I utilize both like the highs and the lows of each of these strengths in my position, find out where I need to like shore up, get some help, get some support, and then lean on your teammates, your peers within the organization, outside of the organization, to kind of help like support you in those areas and kind of like really give you an opportunity to hold you accountable. So like there's an internal piece of this, and there's an external piece of like once you're able to identify your strengths, again, the highs and the lows of each, and you can kind of like monitor yourself for progress, you can also easily then communicate those strengths to others. So whether that's your boss, whether that's a hiring manager because you're looking for a new job, whether it's your boss's boss, or you can kind of put like an earwig in their ear to keep a mind out for you for X thing that you just happen to be really, really, really good at. Whatever the case may be, that's kind of what you can use this for in such a really impactful way. Okay. So I wanted to be really clear on what my strengths are. Like I know them by heart, but I want to be able to kind of read them to you. So come on. Anyway, okay. So my top 5 strengths: Futuristic, Activator, Input, Responsibility, and Ideation. What they previously were Futuristic, Activator, Empathy, Responsibility actually was at the top. So let me rephrase that. Responsibility, I think Futuristic, then Empathy, then Individualization, and then Activator at the last. So not only did things, new strengths come in and some old strengths, I don't know, went away, that's also not true. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. And not only did some new strengths come in and some other strengths displace some other strengths, but they also switched order, and the order does actually matter. I won't get into all the specifics of this. You can definitely find like a strength finders like coach or a mentor to give you all the specifics, and they also have a lot of great videos and things like that, but I digress. So I'll read you a little bit about, so they have shared themes, and they have your personalized version based on how you answered all these questions. And so actually, let me take a step back. So Strength Finders is a personality assessment. I think there's 130 something questions, and you're supposed to answer them based on just what your gut reaction is, and don't think too hard about it. And everyone overthinks it. So my biggest recommendation to you is literally do not overthink this thing. There's no right answer, there's no wrong. You giving a quote unquote wrong answer because it's hard to choose between 2 of these options It's not going to throw you off too much. The whole point is just to get it out there, get your first initial reaction out there, not judging it, which is important, and then kind of see what the results come back with, and then kind of go from there. Because I feel like the people that are like, oh, this isn't really me, those are the people that thought too hard about these answers and they weren't just reflexive. And I think that's why you end up getting like things you're like, yeah, I can see this, but like it's not great. Like follow the directions, put it out there, and trust me on this. Like I haven't seen this go bad. I've just seen it not be as useful as it could have been because people overthought it. Okay. So Futuristic, they have some shared themes and your personalized themes based on your answer. So my Futuristic are people who are especially talented in futuristic theme are inspired by the future and what could be. They inspire others with their visions of the future. Sounds true to the term, right? People who are especially talented in the Activator theme can make things happen by turning thoughts into action. They are often impatient. People who are especially talented in the input theme have a craving to know more. Often they like to collect and archive all kinds of information. People who are especially talented in the responsibility theme take psychological ownership of what they say they will do. They are committed to stable values such as honesty and loyalty. Very true. And people who are especially talented in the ideation theme are fascinated by ideas. They're able to find connections between seemingly desperate phenomena. At the highest level, all of these 5 strengths really do embody me. And I think you can probably see why I ended up as a product person and why I'm good at what I do, because all of these things are important. Responsibility, I have a high level of responsibility to my customers, to my team workers, to the company that I'm working with. And so the high of that is that, like, one, what I say I'm gonna do, you can trust in that. The low of that is that sometimes I do too much. I'd be out there doing too much, and it's a constant thing. I have another video kind of about understanding what the role requires. But let's say this is your business, or this is your passion project. Or in my case, this is my passion project, right? Where the low of this is that I have such a high responsibility to get it done, to impact so many people, to create the best experience, that I put myself and my self-care at like a lower level. I take care of everyone else in my life but myself. So that's kind of the low of the responsibility. It's like responsibility to others versus like a responsibility to yourself. But nevertheless, the responsibility, the ideation, the futuristic, like how can you build a product or a vision, lead a team if you can't think about what the future is that you're going to create, right? And then the responsibility helps make sure that I get there. The ideation comes in by all of the things that you can imagine. Let's be creative. Let's clearly be innovative. Let's think about how we can get there with limited resources, limited money, because that's literally always the case. What can we test first? What can we validate to make sure that we're investing the right money and time into the right things? All of those things. Activator. I am one of the people that's like, let's get going. I'm always ready to start a project. Analysis paralysis doesn't really apply to me because I'm ready to just make a decision. I am very impatient, and is one of those things that actually also has a low, in the sense that I have to like slow down, honestly, and bring people along the journey with me. And sometimes it takes a little bit more buy-in. My mind is always like, and I'm like, a customer makes sense, the logic is blah, blah, blah. And so that's why we have to do the thing. And people are like, huh? What? I'm like, oh, right, yeah, you're not in my head. You need to slow down and explain this a lot. And then inputs, knowing more knowledge. Again, as you can imagine, being a PM, constantly wanting to talk to our users, constantly wanting to understand either through user research or understanding how their experience is, through the data, through like customer service. All of that is really, really important to me, because I feel like I try to make the best decisions that you can in the moment, but you need information to do so, right? And so I always try and say I want to be very data informed, not necessarily data led, because in my opinion, you can slice and dice data to make it fit any narrative that you want. Like if you've worked in product before for a while, like, you know that's true. And the reality is that even there's a lot of leaders out there that even with presented with the data, they're still not going to do what it says. Like it can clearly say that the customer is like X, and they'll be like, but I want to go with Y. And you're like, make it make sense. I just don't. Okay. So the best thing that I can do, that I can share with y'all, is like to be data informed, to know what's being said, to know people's reactions to things. Because even if you can't get the decision that you want, you can at least fold in the information that you've gathered to make that the end decision as useful as possible. Okay, so those are my 5. I'll put them here so you can see them again. But in essence, you can kind of see how me leaning into these strengths like really help my career over the past, I don't know, dozen years that I've been doing product. And it's also helped a lot in understanding the teams that I've been building and like the team members that I'm working with. So like where I really saw this come to play was actually very early on, right after I did my strengths for the first time, when I was still working at Braintree/PayPal. And I was a new engineering manager joining our team, and they were asking all of these questions about what we were doing and why we were doing this, and what was the timeline on this, and and did I think of this, and I did it. And my responsibility kept into play was like, hold up, like I got this. Why are you questioning me like that? Like it was just like, that was just my reaction. And so we bumped heads a little bit. Like I felt some type of way. And then I found out their strengths, they did it, and their high strength was like learner. And once I understood that context, when I got that data point, I was like, oh, you ain't coming for me. That's not really what this is. You're not questioning me. You're just literally trying to learn and understand. And that reflex, I'm not saying is fully on responsibility. It's definitely on lived experiences. You know, if you know. If you know, then you know. But I will say understanding her strengths and being able to kind of literally plan it, like see it and realize that, oh, this is what she's leaning into immediately, gave me whatever I needed at that point to just be like, to not feel defensive in that moment. And I've used it ever since. Like I really try and get the rest of my teammates to take it. When I'm building out teams, it's really good to understand like who you're working with. I had one person on my team who had really high intellection, which is amazing, right? But what we also identified was that they had an opportunity. I can't think of the word. From time to time, that intellection would then turn into like spiraling. Like they would like constantly question everything and then continuously go down where it stopped being productive. And we were able to kind of identify that together and put in some kind of guidelines and roadblocks to kind of help them like focus that raw talent of intellection in the right ways, and figuring out like when is enough, that type of thing, right? I also work with a lot of achievers. And achievers are interestingly like the flip side of responsibility. Like they do have a lot of responsibility. They tend to want to do a lot, and they tend to be really optimistic in what they can achieve. And then that's where I have to come in and be like, I love that you want to build the Eiffel Tower in 12 days. You don't need to. One, it's probably probable that you can't. Let's figure out what's really doable, right? Based on the time frame and what we need done. And I have to keep on top of them in a sense of like, don't take on too much. Don't set our expectations, don't set our expectations too high that you can get X done and Y time because you want to get it done. Like the desire is there, but like you just need to leave yourself some buffer. Just because life happens, a person can only go so long for so much. What am I trying to say? Oh my God. A person can only go so hard for so long at a certain amount of time. So there's times where like you have the desire to do it, but you just can't physically do all the things, right? And there's nothing bad, because I'm not the type of PM that's like, you have to get this done by this arbitrary date. We will do what we can. We'll try to make these dates as realistic as possible if we have to give a date, but I digress on dates and roadmaps and things of that nature. Anyway, back to strengths. So hopefully those like 2 examples, or maybe 3, I don't even know how much I've just been blabbing, have been helpful to kind of see what the benefit of understanding your strengths are. And then also, so part 2. So how do I talk about my strengths in like an interview or tell my boss about it? So I've literally just said, these are my 5 strengths. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Clifton Strengthfinders, but here are the 5 strengths. And what that means to me is X, Y, and Z. So I've literally just been like, here's what it is, and here's how I personify all of these things, and here's how I use it in my job, and here's blah, blah, blah. When I talk to my boss, sometimes I'll be that straightforward as well. And sometimes I'll take some of my strengths and just lean on them, or ask them for help to be like, hey, I have this, I have a really good strength that I'm able to do this really well. I would love it for you if you could like keep an eye out for these things that like I've just been known to kind of get myself into from time to time. I really appreciate it. And I've also said that to my peers. So like at one organization where we did the Strengthfinders, what was really cool is that like we put together, or the team that helped us us with this, kind of put together, you know, each of our highs and our lows, and then like an opportunity, essentially like who you can go to, who of your peers you can go to help you with this extra thing. And so there's a couple of situations where it's like, oh, I can work with this person because they have a high strength in X, Y, and Z, where not that I have a low one, but it balances out kind of like where the low of my current strength is, if that all makes sense. Pause. All right, well, so hopefully this was really helpful for y'all to at least so hopefully this was really helpful for y'all to kind of get a little bit, what am I trying to say? Oh my gosh. All right, I hope this was useful for y'all to like really understand, like not just Clifton Strengthfinders, but how to really use it for yourself. Figure out how to like showcase this in job interviews, like again, showcase this to your boss or like the important people in your life, and help them help you. Because like I think at the core of like the strengths and personality assessments of any kind is essentially being self-aware enough, getting that like these data points, this context, so that you can use it to your benefit in some type of way. And that's why I really like the Strengthfinders. Because for me, it's been really accurate, probably the most accurate that I've seen at all. And I can see I've been able to use it in the workplace and use it to my advantage, and hopefully you will be able to. So anyway, as usual, give me your thoughts on any of the things. I can go deeper into my strengths if you're interested. We can also, you know, like workshop some of your strengths and like how you could potentially use those, figure out what those highs are. Like you do have to think about the lows. Like do tell you a good amount of information when you give it. When you take the assessment, they'll give you like this document that showcases and gives you like a personalized blurb of what this means for you. So it'll give you a lot of detail there, but like you do have to be still thoughtful and introspective, and think about like, but really, how does this work for me? How have I seen this play out in my personal relationship and my work relationships? Because the same threads are all throughout. Like for me, the futuristic, I literally have to stop myself from like thinking 25 steps in the future when it comes to relationships, because that's just naturally what I do. And just kind of go more with the flow and trust the process, you know? So things like that. Anywho, all right, I'll let y'all go. Until next time, see you later. Bye.